Hello, Guardians, and welcome to Destiny Reset, episode 190. This show is about anything and everything related to the Destiny franchise. If you love playing Destiny 2 as much as we do, you're in the right place. This reset, we welcome special guest to the show, Myelin Games. We talk about the development of the Destiny Grimoire Anthology, what the Allegiance Quest could mean for Destiny down the road, and finally, Myelin gives us some insight into some of the new lore for Season of the Drifter.
Hello, Guardians, and welcome. It's AER0KNIGHT, and of course, CyborgSasquatch. How's it going, man?
Hey, how are you this evening?
I am excellent, other than I don't feel too great, but it doesn't matter because it's time to talk about Destiny, man.
Last week I was dead. This week you're dead.
If you hear snoring
like you're fine
or something, you know, just like, I don't know. You can't text me. You can't yell at me. It'll be too loud in the mic. I don't know. We'll just roll with it.
The show must go on.
It must, yes.
It
but
must.
I mean, it's the very cool thing is we have someone on this week that we've wanted on for a while. Time zones are OP, but we figured it out, and we're super excited. I mean, none other than Mr. Myelin, Myelin Games. What's up? How's it going, man?
Hey, how you going? I feel sorry for you guys, man. I got the flu myself when I was in Japan, and it absolutely kicked my butt. I was
while you were there?
I started getting it whilst I was there, and I was actually there for the Anthem event, and I sort of was, you know, obviously pretty happy to be there and just managed to push through. And then as soon as I got home...
That's pretty strong-willed. The flu's no joke.
Yeah, like I had fevers and that, but because it's winter, I would just go outside and walk around in a t-shirt, and I was like, "Oh, this is so nice." And,
roll with it.
Yeah,
it's the
and
best
then
way to cool
when
off.
I got home, my God, I had fevers, hallucinations. I was like bedridden for 3 days. I was completely gone. So I don't envy you guys
crazy.
Pushing through the cold.
You powered through it, man. Like you made it work. Yeah, and we, you know, time zones are. We were joking about that. This is normally when we record, so it's very normal for us to be up till 1, 2, 3 in the morning on recording nights. But for you, it's like midday on Sunday afternoon. So like you probably have plenty of things you can be working on at this point. So we appreciate you joining us.
You know what Sunday afternoons are like. It's like a lot of house chores. So you guys have got me out of some gardening house chores.
That's awesome. It's a good distraction then, huh?
Yep.
Well, we're super excited to have you. You and I met at the summit, which has been almost a year ago now, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Is it more? Official.
Is it longer?
Summit.
No, they've had more summits though, but it's only been a year, I think.
I think it was last April. I think I could be wrong. For some reason, I was thinking
it was definitely last year because I
Yeah.
remember making multiple trips to the US, and that sucked badly.
yeah. Because what's your travel time for that?
It's something like a total of about 24 hours of actual flying.
I remember you telling me something crazy like that.
Yeah, it's about 24 hours of flying, and then add in your stopover times and get to the airport, you know, a couple hours beforehand, and getting through customs and all that.
You told me that. I was like, it took me 3 or 4 hours. We're in the middle of the U.S. I was like, I cannot even come close to saying anything about even the time difference. Nothing. Like I couldn't say anything compared to that. It was amazing you were even walking around.
Well, the really good thing about being that far away is you can go, "Look, Bungie, can you please give me an extra night at the hotel just so..."
Yeah, like one?
Just so I'm not walking off a 24-hour flight and straight into the studio and haven't, you know, even put my bags down and all that kind of stuff.
Well, dude, we met, and then it was quite the trip. You and I ended up hanging out quite a bit. You and I and a couple others, Mercules, we we got to have that little meeting that we did with Barrett and a couple other team members about lore.
Yeah.
And then we went and ate some lunch with the Derp fam, which is our amazing community. And yeah, we got to hang out quite a bit. So it was really cool.
It was good.
To get to know you. And we've been talking since. But we're glad to finally have you on the show. I know Cyborg, both of us dive into lore quite a bit, but Cyborg, I know he's got some stuff. I think he might have told you before we hit record. He's got some stuff he wants to pick your brain about.
Oh, cool.
I'm just nerding out so hard this season and last season with all the cool content they've thrown our way. So it's fun to have you on, somebody else that is interested in that aspect of Destiny, and I mean, obviously,
an expert of sorts, we could say.
Throw it around a little bit. So we'll talk about that.
Cool.
But glad to have you on. You've got an awesome array of Destiny content that you put out between your YouTube videos, and you've got the Destiny Down Under podcast, which is fantastic. You guys got a great group there of hosts that put a fun spin on that part of the community for sure.
Yes.
And it is an entertaining show.
So we're really happy to have you, and it was tough finding the right time when we could all get together, but how cool is it that we're halfway across the planet and we can get together and make a podcast, right?
Yeah.
Very cool.
Very, very cool.
Cool stuff.
So
our favorite game.
I guess I kind of preempted a little bit, telling our listeners, if they're not familiar with Myelin, what he does and his unique place in our community. But we'd love to hear more about you and inform our listeners more so they can get to know you a little better. So,
Sure.
If you would, Myelin, just tell us a little bit about yourself, just generally, man. What do you like? What's life like? What are you into?
Well, I guess like personally by myself, I am a PhD student at the moment. Actually, my background's occupational therapy. I worked sort of in the industry for about 7 years, and sort of left that workplace and found a couple of months of unemployment between jobs, and that's actually when I started YouTube. And so I've been doing YouTube and sort of my PhD at the same time. YouTube a little bit longer for about YouTube's about 4 years now. Pretty much when Destiny came out is when I started my channel, and I'm a couple years coming up 3 years into my PhD as well. So that's going to finish hopefully soon. I say that, but I'm pretty far behind. So the competing interests at the moment between reading articles and reading lore. It's usually what do I want to read today? So I do a lot of reading and a lot of writing. So my YouTube channel's primarily a Destiny lore channel. So I write all my scripts for that. So I read a lot of the lore books and lore tabs and anything Bungie's releasing, and hopefully put it into a bite-sized consumable piece of lore, so for people who either new to it or hardcore fans can still enjoy, and that's the YouTube side of it. Also do some live streams on YouTube, which have been actually a ton of fun. They're not your typical live streams where you actually just play. Like a lot of the time I have a Word document up and we're just reading lore tabs and chats jumping in and saying, who could this be and who could that be, and sort of adding speculation or correcting me as often chat does. When you have the hive mind of a lot of people, it's amazing how helpful it is. So I think I'll probably be doing a little bit more of those as well.
Yeah, it's pretty unique. I mean, that's what streaming's all about. I'm sure your viewers and your followers and stuff, they enjoy that quite a bit. It kind of gets them involved in the process of even your thinking on the lore and ultimately your content creation, I bet.
Yeah, pretty much. Like they sort of see the process for crafting a script from what's written, and it's also nice to have other people around while you're doing it. I think you think just because YouTuber has lots of subscribers, like I don't know, your mind likes to think that they're surrounded by people all the time. But for most time, it's like you by yourself, reading and writing, and then you send it out to the world by uploading it.
Yeah, I'll have to stop by sometime. I don't know, maybe once I've stopped by your streams. I always check out your YouTube videos. But it honestly sounds very fun.
Yeah.
To just kind of speculate with you.
Yeah, the last 2 streams, I pretty much just read one of the new lore books from Season of the Drifter. So we just analyzed every entry in one of the lore books from sort of start to finish.
Very cool.
Yeah, so people could just follow along at home. They could just put it on the background and have the lore read to them, and you know, me reading from chat and sort of adding bits and pieces to it. So that was fun.
That's great. Yeah, that's really good.
And then we've got, as you mentioned, the podcast as well, the Destiny Down Under podcast, which is complete not opposite, but the other side of my personality, the very Australian side of me that is less scripted, a little bit more anarchy, a little bit looser on the language being used, and you know, that's a big part of me as well. And I think people are quite surprised when they go from a scripted YouTube version of Myelin Games to seeing me on a sort of Aussie podcast. I think it can be confronting and not everyone's cup of tea. But you know, it's
like, wait a minute.
It's very truthful. It's very honest, and it's a ton of fun as well.
Very cool. Yeah. I've tuned into that before as well. Very entertaining. You three, just definitely laughing. You will make people laugh for sure. That's a given. Very entertaining. But I mean, you kind of dove into all your content creation stuff and all that good stuff. Tell us a little about yourself. What about specifically what got you into gaming and then ultimately into Destiny? Like, what drew you to Destiny?
Well, with gaming, I'm trying to think back to what originally I got really hooked into. I mean, 007 GoldenEye on 64 was probably like my first real, not obsession, or maybe obsession. You know, like before that, I probably would go play outside and prefer to do other activities. But when GoldenEye came along, that was one of the things that was like, I can't think about doing anything else apart from playing GoldenEye and like doing the speed runs on it to get the unlocked cheats and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I played that snow mission so many times where you could snipe the barrels from way back. I'm surprised we haven't mentioned that mission before. Maybe we have. It's so good. Multiplayer. It was C buttons. You got so good with the side swaying with the C buttons.
Yeah, so man. I mean, that was probably my first sort of gaming life. But I have a twin brother who was much more into technology and computers than me. Like we started off with, you know, DOS commands on PC, and we had some games on there, which like Jazz Jack Rabbit and Crystal Caves and those kind of games. And with my twin, he would probably, because you'd share a console, he would usually be inside playing, and I'd probably be more outside doing activities, riding bikes and doing exercise. But GoldenEye definitely got us hooks in. And then it sort of just escalated from there. You know, every console, you know, that would come out, we would upgrade from the 64. So I've got a nice, I've got a nerd cabinet with all of our old consoles on display, which looks really cool. And my nana and pop had the just the standard Nintendo, you know, the original Nintendo original. So we've got that. My girlfriend had PlayStation 1, so we've got that there. Then we've got the 64, PS2, PS3. And I think
the whole mix.
I think that's it. There's no Xboxes, but I do have an Xbox now. But there's no early versions of Xbox. It's been mainly PlayStation through my gaming career. And then how did I get into Destiny, really? Which you might think is odd, because, you know, a lot of people that got into Destiny was because of Halo, and that would require you to have an Xbox. But you know, I did play Halo. I had a friend up the road who had an Xbox and played a lot of the original Halo, but never had one myself. And I couldn't say I was a huge, you know, I didn't really know much about Bungie, but as I said, it was a time where I was in between jobs and I wanted to look into YouTube, and it was pretty much, the next big thing that everyone was excited about. So it was 2 or 3 videos into the YouTube. That's what I wanted to cover. I did some test videos on Last of Us, actually, just to work out how to do video editing and record my microphone and how YouTube worked altogether. But the very first videos was Destiny to begin with, and the reason I got into Destiny because there was a lot of hype about it, and it was something I wanted to cover on the YouTube channel.
That's cool, man. So you had intention from the start just to make content from the get-go.
Yeah, definitely. So I was working as a therapist before that with making recreation equipment for kids and adults with disabilities, so things that didn't exist. So we had like an engineering team, and we had done a number of modified Xbox and PlayStation controllers, very similar to what you see now. Have you seen the Microsoft sort of
the adaptive controller?
The adaptive controllers. We made really big buttons like that because that's obviously now available on the market, but there was nothing that you couldn't go down to the shops and buy something that suited the specific need of your kid with a disability. So we basically just made things that suited the person, so they could play Xbox or PlayStation, and it was all, we had electrical engineers and mechanical, so we made them in nice boxes, and you literally just plug it in to the Xbox or PlayStation like you would a normal controller. And sometimes we mounted on wheelchairs, or it looked like arcade systems mounted on the wheelchairs. Cool. It was really cool. And when I left that, I my therapist brain was, I think gaming is very powerful, and I want to work in the industry of gaming and health, essentially. And that was the original sort of spark to create a YouTube channel. Like, the original sort of idea was to have a platform to work in that area. And then it sort of just generalized as I started to work out how hard YouTube was, and that, you could make very wholesome content, but it wouldn't really go anywhere unless you were following some sort of trends and so. But that was sort of the original spark of why I even looked into YouTube and Destiny. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Very cool.
So I guess that kind of led into how you got into content creation, and then what is it about lore specifically? You've mentioned that you wanted to do YouTube content, but what led you to be doing that type of content?
Yeah, this is a really interesting question. I think a lot of people ask, like, how do you make a successful channel? How do you make a successful YouTube channel, or how do you get traction? And I think for me, YouTube was a real eye-opener to knowing more about yourself. And I know that sounds like really silly and sort of like how can YouTube teach you about yourself? But I think the way that you perceive yourself, and at the beginning, I was like, oh, I'm a pretty funny dude. Like, you probably see a little bit of that on the Destiny Down Under podcast, but in my social groups, I was always the person sort of making other people laugh. So I actually tried to do a lot of humor on YouTube when I very first started, and it was so bad. And I just realized that I just didn't understand that system, and that's not how people perceived me. But what I realized
I can vouch for that, though. I mean, because when we hung out at the summit, you were making the whole crew laugh at the table and stuff. So I can confirm that, at least for real life, Myelin.
Yeah, right. So I guess in my head, I was like, oh, that's me. Like, I thought that's who I was, but when you're recording by yourself, it's a very different dynamic. And it's actually anyone who is successful with like humor and making jokes on the internet is very skilled and very natural and talented at doing that, because it is very hard to get a large population to actually find what you make to be funny.
Right.
And I guess I sort of had that revelation, like, maybe I'm not the funny guy. And I thought, I wonder who I am. And then I sort of was thinking about the way that I am in real life, and I am very much a storyteller, and I actually get a lot of humor from telling stories. So that's usually how like my joke format in my like social stories is to like tell a story but like over exaggerate it and put bits and pieces here. So I thought maybe I'm a storyteller. Maybe that's what I should be. And then you sort of combine that with, I was actually working at a university at the time. I was tutoring in occupational therapy, and you can see there's like this blend of education and storytelling, and that. When I just started making law videos, I was like, oh my God, this is really suited to who I am, like an educator and a storyteller. It might not have the humor that I get to put into like real life, but I can see that this is like really suited to my strengths and my personalities to read something, to analyze it, to make it, you know, in layman terms, and then to put it together in some sort of story fashion. And I was like, yeah, that's me. And once I sort of discovered that, I was like, yeah, even though the views weren't quite there, I was like, this will work. I know this is what I should be doing on the platform.
Destiny lore, right? Especially even another layer back in the Grimoire days, because I mean, you provide a platform for a very organized fashion for I mean, it's a lot of research to get all that together, and then on top of that, collect your thoughts.
Right.
So
yeah, it was. I mean,
yeah,
it's. Oh my! Destiny lore is so accessible now. It is so like back in the old days, there was no Ishtar Collective. Like if you liked a Grimoire card, you were, you know, having the PlayStation on, and then you had a, you know, laptop with a Word document, and you were transcribing it off your TV into a Word document. You know, whereas now it's all automated and it's in Ishtar Collective, and you know you can literally just search words. But at the same time, that was why there was a niche for it and a market for it, because it was so inaccessible. People needed someone to do all the digging and to bring it to life. And I think people probably still miss a little bit of that now, because it's very accessible now. But you know, that was very valuable for a lot of people to piece those like Grimoire cards together, because no one knew what order they should go in. Like we've got an order now to
right.
Law books are, you know, are in orders, and the only people who knew,
they collect pieces together.
Yeah, they're collections. And the only people that sort of knew how everything should fit together was the original authors of the cards, and not all of them work at Bungie anymore. So, and that was actually pretty much my main role when I worked on the Destiny Grimoire anthology, was to be a contractor for Bungie to suggest, really from a community perspective, I guess that's sort of why. And also because in some instances I had been following the lore since day dot, so I had a good understanding of how these cards fit together, and to suggest, I guess, an order is what, you know, looking at everything from Destiny Year 1 or when the Grimoire cards are around. That was sort of the question that was posed to me. How would you put these cards in a collection? What order would you put them in that would make sense to someone who wants to buy a book, and they might want to read it from start to finish, or they might want to read a chapter? Like, where do you start in that process, and what does that look like? And that eventuated to the Grimoire anthology, which you can buy.
Yes.
Yeah. So
excellent.
If people aren't aware that, you know, of course, there's a Grimoire anthology that was published. I guess it came out last year at this point now, right? Was it that long ago? I don't remember the exact date.
Yep.
Wow.
So you were working on that in secret for some time, right?
Yes.
Helping them curate this.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, to curate it and work with their products team. And it was really, we got to work with some of the artists as well. So I got to. It was I think one of the coolest things is that I was given the opportunity to give notes to the artists on what I would like to see in the lore drawn you know, that was going to be,
Oh, wow.
you know, Bungie official, essentially, you know, so things
Got
like...
you to thank for some of those cool pictures, huh?
Well, not
cool
to thank that.
illustrations.
The artist is amazing. I wish I could remember his...
The ideas, at least maybe some of the ideas behind some of the inspiration.
Yeah. Do you know, like...
I mean, there were two layers of that were so cool. That was so cool is, one, just the opportunity for you was fantastic. But then as a fellow community member, you know, we were just like, that is so awesome that Bungie is working with somebody like Myelin, who's so well respected in the lore community for something like that, you know, after it, of course, got announced. And it was just such a cool thing all around. It was just really neat.
Yeah. I think it was it's funny, like when I was contracted to work on it, it was the worst the lore was in. I think this was like just before lore books came out. So this was like, you know, Grimoire cards had been removed, just Destiny 2. There were, I think it was some of the worst, probably the worst year I had on YouTube, where people were actually leaving the channel. First time I had like negative subscribers and all that kind of thing. And, but you know, it's interesting seeing from the business point of view to sort of have that foresight to hopefully, you know, things are going to pick up in the future, and we've got all this lore content coming in, and, you know, the lore community is just immensely strong now, and, you know, the book's out and now it's published. But if you went back to that time period when I was working on it, like, it was, you know, people weren't happy at all. But I'm so glad that, you know, I think some of it stemmed from that meeting at the summit. You know, there are leaders at Bungie who really do care about the lore, and I personally believe that they helped push this, because there were so many things for Destiny to fix at that time. I can imagine it would be a very easy project to say no to, and I think it was a bit of the perfect storm that, you know, we'd been to the summit. We'd personally met with some of the writers, and they got to see sort of some of the ways that I work and look at the lore. And, you know, I imagine there was, hey, why don't we just contract Myelin, start off small, you know, like I think, you know, someone was able just to slide it through, and now it's, you know, now it's massive. The book outdid the like expectations massively. Yeah. You know, that's why it got sold out. You know, that if you read between the lines there, that means that they didn't make enough copies for their That means it exceeded expectation for selling copies.
Yeah, that was fantastic. I mean, that thing sits next to my bed, you know, like ready to be read at any point. And I remember you telling us, I mean, you kind of told some of us at the summit, like, you were concerned just about the future of the lore, obviously, like you just said, for those reasons, and even your channel and stuff. And then you left feeling excellent. I remember you telling me that. Yeah. Kind of the front and back of that event.
Yep. I mean, after I mean, you were at that meeting with Christopher Barrett and some of the other writers, and you know, I did a very lengthy Reddit post about covering everything we spoke about during, you know, from a lore point of view. And, you know, my sort of parting words on that Reddit post was, you know, subjectively, I felt that they 100% were listening, but I feel like that it was sort of like yeses, like, yes, we're already doing that. And I don't know if you got that impression too, but, you know, when Christopher Barrett and some of the other guys that were there were like, yes, I think that's a good suggestion. There was this like hint of, yes, I think that's a good suggestion, and we're already doing it. It was unspoken, but there was definitely like, I left feeling like, I think they've got this. Like, I think they're actually already implementing all the suggestions we have, and of course now we know that they were. You know, this was before there was a not a codex, whatever you want to call it, an in-game. This was before you had the lore triumphs in game, right? And, you know, one of our suggestions was people want it in game, and they're like, yeah, that's a really good suggestion. You know, so they didn't say like, yeah, we've already got that plan, but it was like, yeah, it's coming. It's going to be there. We've already done it. So yeah. That was
cool. I wanted to ask, on the anthologies in volume 1 that we've gotten so far, and I don't want to push the boundaries of what you can talk about, because obviously, you know, you've said right now you're working on or have worked on volume 2, right?
Yep.
And so one thing I found interesting and I really liked was, not knowing what was going to be in the book. Okay, is it just going to be a, chapters 1 through 10 of like, here's everything from Destiny 1, or is it, what it ended up being was this really cool curation of kind of a central idea and premise, like this subject matter from the Destiny lore thus far, right?
Yep.
And I thought that was really interesting, and even some of the choices that were made to include things that might be like you might tangentially or like theory craft that they kind of belong together in philosophically. And I loved how some good choices were made on, all right, we're going to have this story and we're going to also going to have this story. And these are related, even though it may not seem to be the case. Right.
Yeah. There was, and, you're spot on. And there was a lot of discussion about, because one line of argument is we don't want to put these things together because half the fun is basically the audience making that that link, right? Half the fun of lore is you let them make that link. And so that's one argument. And if you put them together, it gives a greater clue to the writer's intention, or it starts to canonify, it starts to make this more canon that these are the events and they happened in this order. Right. So that's sort of one argument. The second argument is, well, to be honest, if we don't put them together, what you're going to get is just an absolute mess of a book. And a hard copy is very hard to go through and read and start joining things together. Like, it's not like you have like a database where you can open up 10 tabs and you can read them and go, oh yeah, they're together now. Like if you've got a hard copy, like it's hard to keep, I guess, the puzzle pieces. And it's not an A to B
story, right? It's not a story with a conventional narrative. So no, you can't pick it up. I mean, it was great that the books of sorrow were chosen because they to a sense do read like a story.
Yes.
So I think that was a good place to start for accessibility's sake, and it's also fantastic. But
I think there were the design principles. Well, for me anyway, and this was my pitch to Bungie is and it's also what they wanted. Like we don't want to have an encyclopedia. This is not a reference book where you have a section that's just on Fallen, and you have a section on Hive, and you have a section on Vex, and everything's just thrown in there. And so when I looked at the books, I actually read every single Grimoire card again just to create the first book, because what I didn't want was you to put all the good stuff in the first 2 volumes. And then what you're left with is like scraps of like
bits and pieces,
very complex lore. So, and it was thematically analyzed. I actually used some of my stuff from my PhD to go through and theme every sort of lore entry again and go, okay, so what, not, you read a lore entry and you go, not that it's just about the Hive or it's about Oryx, but like, what is the greater message about this card? Is this about questioning Guardians' moral compass, or is this about comparing Guardians to the darkness, or is this about? And so I went through and themed those cards, and that's how you get to something like Dark Mirror. And when you consider that it's not really a theme about the Hive, it's a theme about a Dark Mirror. It's a theme about reflecting Guardians' choices and their choice to keep killing, and sort of when you juxtapose those together, you start thinking, are we any different from the Hive? And that's actually some of the development process I had for the anthologies. I wanted you to close the book and then go, and the question for Dark Mirror is I wanted you to close the book and be like, I wonder if we're any different from the Hive. And so if you had something like that, then I achieved my goal. Maybe it was another question, but that was sort of how I like to theme them. And then obviously that went through the whole review process with Bungie, and we talked and we agreed and we disagreed, and we thought this should go here and this should go here, and no, we should include this, and no, this is a little bit too boring, we might start losing viewers or readers here, and no, this belongs in a different theme, this belongs in a different book, et cetera.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciated the effort that went into the overall package there, and it's not just a encyclopedia, like you said. Like, when I opened it up, and because I didn't just start reading it, it'd be like, I'm just like peeling through the pages. All right, what's in here? What cards? What's, I was just eating it up, and I saw that there's, it wasn't just, all right, let's dump the Books of Sorrow in a book with some illustrations. Like, some thought was put into it. So I really enjoyed that, and I'm really looking forward to the next volume to see what the subject matter is and how it's put together.
Me too.
And I think it's great for putting it in the hands of the player that maybe they have a tangential interest in the material, and it would be more accessible if it's just there in a book. Definitely. And it's, a collection of ideas that they can look and say, okay, it's not spoon-fed, but they know where to start, and they can make their own conclusions. Because one of my biggest, feelings about the lore community is it's so important, if somebody's interested, to just go and read it themselves, because there's a lot that you can figure out on your own. There's a lot that you can analyze and realize, like, what was the writer's intention, and what is the idea here, and what are they trying to say, or what's the story about, and you don't, like, the content that you do and so many other creators do is fantastic in presenting things to people that can't or won't do that. But then I think it's like a stepping point for people to get a little deeper and see how deep that rabbit hole goes. 'Cause it's pretty deep.
Yeah, I think so. I think I think that's a really good point. I think the anthology makes an entry point very accessible, and it's because it's in that order. And I think this will change as Destiny goes on, because the lore books have really changed that process too, because the lore books now have an order already, and we never had that in the Grimoire cards. Like, they're known, and so they're also a good entry point now. Like, I guess for people getting into the lore, they actually can read an entry every week as they unlock it, or they can read it as they get a collectible. So the problem isn't as pronounced now, but we still have a lot of lore to get through that we sort of need to order and sort. We've got like 3 years of lore, basically. It wasn't until Forsaken that we started getting
pieces
more,
of stories told over the years, right? There's obvious stuff like the whole Dwindler's Ridge and all the threads that pulls, but then there's the story of the Awoken that has been told and then really told again, and that was one of my absolute favorite things about Forsaken, was what we really got to find out in all of the lore and all of the story and the things that came with that. I can't wait for that book.
You guys kind of just a couple minutes ago, you talked about something that I'm so glad you did, because it made me remember when we have lore people on. And I don't want to forget to ask this before we get into the news here. Myelin, and we talked about a very good entry point, but for people that have maybe are intimidated to dive into the lore, like, what would you tell those Guardians, like, how to start, what they should do?
There are a couple of probably ways. I mean, one is what we mentioned. I actually think that the Book of Sorrows is an really good starting point, because you don't need any other prior knowledge to read the Books of Sorrow, because chronologically it occurs far ahead of any other event, really. So, the way that it's written, it can really stand alone as a lore piece, and obviously it gives you a huge amount of insight into understanding one of the major enemy races, being the Hive. So that's a great introduction, I think, to to wanting to get into Destiny lore. The other way to probably do it is when, like what's happening now with Season of the Drifter, when things are being released, to actually read those entries as they are released. So as the book is released, I would start reading it, whether that's the collectibles or whatever. I probably would stick to, so there's lots of different ways that they give you the lore. There's the lore books, but there's also lore tabs, which are lore tabs are on certain weapons and armor pieces. So I'd probably stick to lore books, just because there's a chronological order to those books, and you can read them from start to finish. And if you don't want to read them in game, the website I use is Ishtar Collective, and they Baxter from Ishtar talks with the narrative team about what they want to be publicly accessible, because the website itself just takes from the API. So, for example, when Truth to Power came out, which is the big book that only comes every 3 weeks when you go to Marasov's Throne World, that was accidentally leaked. So Baxter was really good in actually removing it from his database so people couldn't read it until it was actually released. Obviously, by that time, it was all on Reddit. But essentially, if it's on Ishtar Collective, it's been greenlit by Bungie that, you can have access to it and you can read it, even if it's not out yet. Okay. So there is, the book about the 9 right now, you only get 1 entry every week. That's the invitation to the 9. So it's going to be 9 entries over 9 weeks, but you can read all 9 entries right now. And that's because Baxter's checked with narrative and they're like, yeah, there's no, there's going to be some spoilers in the lore, but there's nothing like there's
no great big secret.
Yeah, it's not like Aldrin, right? It's not like Aldrin being revived as a Guardian. So, there's stuff like that, that it's relatively safe to read and to talk about, sort of thing. So
let me ask you, while we're on this topic, this is something I'm very interested to hear your opinion on, because you're dipping your toes in this. So one of the biggest complaints that I have this year, I guess thus far, especially because now that Destiny is on PC and it's so easy to data mine things from the game, right? So as a creator, but also someone that's very interested in the lore, how do you feel about the fact that we can get, I guess, lore and or other pieces of story content before they're really intended to be delivered? How does that affect you as a player, and then what do you think about that as a creator that's got to deal with that?
Yeah, there are. I think we hadn't had to deal with that before, and now we have to. And there's sort of a gentleman and ladies agreement between most of the lore content creators. And the general rule of thumb that we've sort of taken a stance with, and this big conversation came out because of Truth to Power, which was leaked. And, we all have a dialogue with some of the people in narrative. And I guess personally, we were getting messages, or at least knowing that they were quite upset that the stories that they had been working on for a year were leaked. And we're basically revealing a conclusion of, Marasov and all the entities involved with that.
Right.
And
yeah,
all of us could probably empathize with that. And there was so much other volume that we could talk about. We realized we didn't really need to cover that. And so the general rule of thumb at the moment is we cover what is available in game. So I have... but at the same time, now there's a nice routine where Baxter checks with narrative, so we know if it's on Ishtar Collective, it's relatively fair game. But I'm still sort of using that rule of thumb. The Ecdysis lore book, I probably will wait until most of the 9 weeks is up. I've read it personally, and we read it on stream, but not as many people come through stream. So, but we might wait a bit longer. Same with the Thorn book. I've read it once, but I don't really intend to cover it until most people have got the lore entries. So, and that's how most of us are operating at the moment, just because there is much greater integration to what's happening in game and what's happening in the lore collectibles. And we don't really want to ruin that experience for people. So that's sort of how we're coping with it as content creators. I think, I honestly think that it really does ruin the surprise.
It sucks.
Like, Aldrin and stuff getting leaked. That was just so awful to see that come out.
That was the one thing. Truth to Power was unfortunate, but not. It wasn't mind blowing, right? And it wasn't something like, I don't know. It kind of is, but the Aldrin thing was that I can see, like, they wanted that to be a big holy cow, right?
Yeah.
And that getting spoiled, like, just pissed me off to no end. Like,
yeah.
But you have to wonder as well, like, they understand that this stuff is getting pulled out of the game before it's intended. Like, I'm not a developer, so I don't know what can be done, but I wish that there was something that they could do on the back end to prevent this stuff from getting leaked out, or something different to push it out, right?
From what I heard, I'm pretty sure it was to do with Aldrin, but there has been cases where it's been a very firm conversation between Bungie and whoever got access to that information to be like, you will tell us how you got that information so we can improve our security, or you're going to be in a bit of strife. So I obviously it's not really spoken about, but depending on how they get hold of it, I do think that there is a behind closed doors conversation with those people, if they can get hold of them.
Sure.
Being about, like, you're going to help us and we're going to pretend this didn't happen, but you're going to tell us how you did it, sort of deal. And then there's another part, which is it's in the API and the difference between, is it freely available? And I've had that conversation very briefly with some of the people at Bungie as well. And, technically, if it's in there, it's I guess public, but it's sort of your interpretation of whether it's public or not. So someone will be like, well, it's not really public because you've got to start data mining to actually get access to it. But from like a legal standpoint, like it's there. So I don't think it's very enforceable for Bungie, and I'm not a developer. So however they have to manage that, if stuff needs to go out in updates and whatever, then it's there, then it's going to be accessed by data miners. So,
right.
And I know that personally people probably would say, well, no, it's not public and you're basically spreading this. But from like maybe a legal standpoint, it's a very blurry line. Like, well, actually, it's there. I'm just looking harder than you're looking. I'm not hacking anything. I'm just looking harder at what they're releasing. And I think that's the argument for it.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. And it's interesting because this is new territory, because they've never really, they've never presented story in this format in such a way that, like, there was an ongoing story being told through lore and cutscenes that weren't part of a campaign. And so it's all kind of new territory. And it's so fantastic that we're getting content like this, but then it's getting spoiled and not being delivered the way it was intended.
I do
so
know
that sucks.
They are the narrative team is having a little bit of fun with it. I know that they have planted red herrings in the lore.
I've heard about
especially targeted at data miners, hoping that they'll spread the wrong message.
That's funny.
Yeah, so there are some little things like that at least you can see, like, I see what they've done here. Like, they're sort of having a bit of a crack at people data mining, and
that's good.
Yeah, that's their little
good.
form of revenge.
I like when they're a little, wall breaking and self-referential.
There's actually a lot more.
We know what you're doing
in Forsaken, actually.
Yeah. Well, we've gotten pretty far deep down into some of this stuff. And we've got some news to cover and things first before we can talk more lore. But I'm interested. I want to try to forget not to ask you about your opinion on Uldren right now.
Okay.
But we'll come back to that.
Okay. Cool.
So many questions.
Yes. So if you're interested in what we're talking about, Destiny Grimoire Anthology Volume 2 is due out. Is it this fall or is it this summer? I know they announced it.
Yeah, I don't really have a lot of info from the sort of product.
They may not have dated it
on release, but what I can say is, because it was so popular, I would, and this is what Bungie advised, is go sign up for email notifications. So go to the Bungie store and the products page, and go to Volume 2, and there should be a little link in the bottom right-hand corner that says something like notifications or let me know when it's available.
There's an email when available.
Like and just sign up to that because they sold out really quick first time round.
Yeah. If you're currently right now, the Volume 1 is sold out in the Bungie store. I did see today that there are some copies available on Amazon. If you haven't gotten your hands on Volume 1, so you can check that out. It's a fantastic book. Hardcover, feels really nice, looks really good. Great read.
Without giving a backhanded compliment, it was better than I thought it was going to be. It's a very, very nice looking book, and it's the very quality. So I don't know why.
If there's one thing,
I don't know why I thought Bungie wouldn't produce something absolutely beautiful, but
right. I was impressed. I mean,
Yeah.
I was certainly impressed with the presentation. If there's one thing that I've come to find is that Bungie's first party merchandise is of the highest quality. Has been for a long time. That's why I love buying their stuff. Besides the fact that I'm obsessed with Destiny, but it doesn't hurt. So let's do this. We've got something we call the Derp Lightning Round, where we get your quick opinion on some interested Derp fam topics that people like to know about you. So we'll hit you with that real quick. Ari, you wanna ask him some of these questions? We'll go back and forth. All right.
Yeah, definitely. We can go back and forth.
Arrow's still here.
Are you? Yeah, I'm still here. I took a quick little
in
nap. I tried to get some yas and some ums in there. You can tell from my voice. Anyways, yeah, we'll go back and forth here, Myelin, and ask you these quick questions. Hopefully not rack your brain too much here, especially the last couple. Favorite class?
Warlock, of course.
There you go.
Logically.
Yeah, I mean,
Logically,
knowledge seekers, come on. Lol.
Yeah. What's your favorite weapon right now in Destiny?
I've really been enjoying a Risk Runner. I don't know why I have not been using it more, but...
Dude.
Do you have the Catalyst?
Yeah, I've got the Catalyst for it as well. Yep.
I was going to talk about it. I talked about it last week. I was going to talk about it again this week. I got one to drop as I'm leveling right now to 700, and I forgot I had the Catalyst and hadn't finished it. Dude, I'm using it in Reckoning. I'm using it in the Blind Well. The thing is unbelievable.
Reckoning is
so good.
Stupid good in Reckoning. It is...
Yeah, it's crazy.
If you've got Taken shooting Arc, oh my god, you can just mob everything. You can take down everything.
It's crazy.
It's really good.
It's so fun too.
It's a really fun.
I had it masterworked like the same night that I got it to drop. And once I realized I'd heard great things, but it doesn't take as long as you'd think either. Not as long as some of the other weapons.
Nowhere near. Yeah.
Anyways, this one's a great one for you, of course. Favorite Destiny character.
Look, I'm going to be pretty boring here because I just think they've done such a good job with the Drifter. Like, he is hands down my favorite character so far from...
Oh, that makes sense.
It's hard not to say the Drifter at this point.
How about this? Before the Drifter, who would it have been?
Toland would be up there. He has some of my favorite quotes. I'm slowly moving away from Toland now. Who would it have been before? Okay. I think Toland's a good choice.
That's good. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's great.
Nice.
There you go.
All right. What is your favorite game besides Destiny you've been playing?
Well, I've been playing... Right now, I just booted up Sekiro. Shadows Die Twice.
Oh, yeah.
The game from Software.
How are you liking that?
It is like I'm not a huge Souls fan. Well, not that I'm not a huge Souls fan. Like I just sort of missed that game somehow. Got into Bloodborne.
I did a little
really
bit.
loved Bloodborne. I actually did a Bloodborne lore series before I even did Destiny lore series.
Oh wow.
I really enjoyed Bloodborne, which is also from Software. It is different. I am enjoying it. I think it's gonna take me a little bit more time before I can recommend or at least give some cautionary advice about.
Yeah,
about
I
it.
think what I've seen that people have liked about it is it's like Souls or Bloodborne, but it's a little more. I guess the movement. You can do some crazy things, kind of. Jumping on stuff and pulling yourself with a
to sort of
grappling or something.
Say it in one sentence. If in Bloodborne and Dark Souls, you have maybe multiple tools to defeat enemies, and parry has always been one of those. In this game, it is like very heavily focused on a parry system. So if you're more of a like duck and roll kind of person and not a parry shields and like parry blows, like you probably won't enjoy this game. I think that's probably the thing to take home from it. This game is, you are a samurai or you're a shinobi, like harrowing, like just deflecting swords, and you have to be ready for that.
Yeah, so there's like swordsmanship, right? You
Yes.
got to parry and thrust.
Yes, it's
deflect
very
and all
much
that
like
stuff.
that. Yeah.
That's cool.
It is cool.
I'm going to check it out. Someone described it as maybe a little more accessible than the Souls games.
So
Do you think that would be true? I mean, I'm sure it's still punishing, but
so the accessibility part comes from the stealth in it. Like you
okay.
It is a great. I actually think it's an okay sort of stealth game. Like you can get through a lot of enemies with stealth attacks, and there's a lot of sneaking, and a lot of verticality.
I love games like that.
Yeah, and that's really cool. But eventually, you're going to face a boss, and that's when you need to
fight.
And and I think the difficulty of the bosses, because it is very focused on the parry mechanic. Like if that's one of your weaknesses, this is going to be like a really tough game for you. But I'm sort of enjoying the challenge because I always shy away from parry. If there's ever a parry option in any game, it's too hit and miss, man. It's way too hard. So it's sort of cool to have a game where it's way more effective to parry, and all the mechanics focus around you pressing a single button at the exact right moment. So that's if you think that challenge might suit you, like that's what I think Sekiro is.
Cool.
There you go.
Yeah,
Everybody knows
I'm
now probably
intrigued.
if they
I'm
like
gonna watch it some more. And
would like it or not.
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, here's our first. I guess we'll call it fun one. A favorite potato chip.
Right, like crisps, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Chris. There we go.
I mean, I don't know if we have as many as you guys over there. Like, is it boring for me to just say like like Doritos, like cheese or something like that? I just like
No, man.
just the
Whatever
standard
you
Doritos.
like.
That's always what I would get. Or
Yeah.
do you have grain waves over there? Have you had a grain wave?
I
don't think so.
Do you know the ones that like they're not healthy, but they claim oven baked or what whatever, they're like somehow fancier than the normal chips. A little bit like that. They're called grain waves here. I don't know how else you describe them, and they're pretty.
We have
nice.
something of that nature. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
It sounds like I have them in my cabinet. I can't even think of the name of them.
Are you gonna say baked lays?
No. Remember the bags? Remember several years ago they had the bags that were super noisy when they tried to make them environmentally friendly. What's that?
Oh yeah, I remember what you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about.
I think we might have
Anyways,
mentioned
okay.
them on the show.
All right, so we'll move on. We got your opinion on that though. Here's the big one. So I read this the other day, so this is why I'm really intrigued. So I read that the most popular pizza in Australia is pineapple pizza. Is that true? And does pineapple belong on pizza?
We
in your opinion?
have. So we call it Hawaiian. Do you have Hawaiian pizza there?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what my wife calls it.
With the ham and
Ham, cheese, and pineapple.
Right.
To be honest, yeah, I'd say it's pretty popular. Like, if you were hosting a LAN party and you had to order like, 5 pizzas and you
For a
didn't
whole
want
bunch
to
of people.
ask everyone, you would probably get a plain like margarita, like cheese. You'd probably get a meat lovers and you'd probably get an Hawaiian. So, like,
Okay. Do you like it?
I do like it. I do like pineapple on pizza.
Okay.
Like I wouldn't turn my nose
Chalk it
up
up to you're
at
just open-minded.
Hawaiian pizza. Yeah.
We are not fans.
You're not
of
fans.
pineapple on
I
pizza.
like it actually. Yeah. Do you guys have?
That's all right.
Do you have like dessert pizzas there?
Oh yeah,
We do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
can go to
we-
some places and get that.
Yeah,
And, those are good. I like some crazy stuff on pizza sometimes. Just not fruit.
Hey, I got a funny story about pizza in the US. If you want to,
What you got? Let's
so,
hear
I think it was a summit trip. On the way back from the US, my flight got delayed, and I could either it would have been GuardianCon. I could either choose to spend an extra night in Florida, or spend an extra night in New York. So, a non-pig, massive law nerd as well, lives a couple of hours out from New York, and I've never met him, but I always speak with him. I said, mate, meet me at New York Airport at JFK, and we'll go out in the town, and because I had a night there, and we ate pizza in Times Square, and I
Nice.
was
Oh wow.
I was thoroughly underprepared to how to eat pizza, and I folded it the wrong way. Like, I don't know why. Like rather, how you sort of, we don't really have
New York
massive.
style pizza has its own like way of it's like thin.
It's
and
thin.
You gotta fold it.
It's
do
thin,
the whole thing.
and you sort of fold it.
Yeah.
Would you say lengthwise?
Right.
So it sort of gives it some
Yes.
structure, some integrity. And I'm like, Anand,
Yeah.
how do you eat this freaking pizza? I'm like, I just made it like a sandwich. I just folded it like on top of itself.
That's how my son does it because he's got little hands, and so he can't do it lengthwise. So he just folds it over like horizontally and
Yes.
just bites into
Yes, that's what I
Man,
did.
pizza sounds
And
so
he
good right
and he
now.
looked at
That's
me. He's
great.
like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing here."
That was something on my wife and I's to-do list too. We went to New York. It's probably been 5+ years ago now, longer than that. But yeah, we had to go to Times Square and eat some pizza.
Yeah.
It's
That's awesome.
something you gotta do.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, man. So, and then finally, last question here. Very, very new topical one. Vanguard or Drifter? Where does your allegiance lie?
I mean, look, anyone who knows anything about the law is not going to pick the Vanguard. I'm just saying. Like, it's
You've got
Shots
you're
fired.
doing videos
Shots
right
fired.
now, right? Where you're like basically selling one side or the other, aren't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was it was actually really
It's a really cool take on it.
yeah, it was a really popular video actually. So I haven't done the Vanguard yet, but that is on the list to do. And the whole
Yeah, I know because,
Go on.
dude, I was like nervous. I'm like, oh no, I'm nervous because I went Vanguard and I'm like, what is he? Because wasn't the thumbnail something about the Vanguard or something?
Yeah,
that?
like,
I can't remember.
don't
And
support
I'm
the
like,
Vanguard or
Mylin's
something.
telling me I
It's about
should have
Nor.
went the other way. Wait a second.
so yeah.
So, knowing the lore, how do you feel about how they presented that choice?
I think it was a good tester to having an allegiance or some sort of allegiance quest in Destiny. I think
Okay.
it's a great tool for storytelling, and it really worked well with getting the community excited for one side or the other. I think there probably definitely there will be some fine tuning for how that evolves in game. For example, like if the Vanguard had law book entries, I really think that the Drifter should have had some other entries, and I really would have liked to see greater variation between doing the Vanguard quest and doing the Drifter quest, like those kind of things. But I think it was a really good start, and
Good first experiment.
yeah, I think it was a really good first experiment. I think the next questions are will this choice be remembered forever now? And how does that complicate the storyline? And how does that complicate voiceover? How does that complicate the Drifter speaking to people that are now aligned with the Vanguard and people who aren't aligned with the Vanguard? And how many times can you repeat, or can you have different allegiance quests? Because that adds now you're a Vanguard, Praxic Order, Sunbreaker, Hunter, whatever. So
right.
I really want to see the idea of allegiance expanded. I really, really hope it's like a test for like light versus dark. That would be like the ultimate.
Yeah.
That's
the big can of worms, right?
Yeah, people are speculating, future
down the line, or in Destiny 3 or something. The quote unquote leaks and all the speculation for a long, long time is like the end game is a choice of light and dark abilities and paths, and I mean, how fantastic and interesting would that be? But it's got to be complicated.
It would,
right?
And I think. At the very sort of surface level, if you compare the Allegiance quest to Faction Wars, it did so much better with player involvement and player actual caring for either one side or the other, and it hadn't really had that sort of engagement from Faction Wars. So I think the Allegiance quest was a massive success, and I hope it's just sort
on
of
its own time
for future stuff.
Yeah. Tying it into characters that you have some story and some some characterization alone makes it more interesting, right? Because the factions are there, but we don't really know a ton about the factions.
Yeah.
We know
exactly.
We probably know more, I guess, about like Dead Orbit and Future War Cult than anything, but they just kind of there's pieces where they've written them in. And they'll show up, they'll show up sometimes and stuff. But with the Drifter and with the Vanguard, like there's an attachment, and then there's, kind of the new guy on the block, and he's interesting and fun and cool, and bad dad, right? So
Log from Destiny Down Under describes it as either the weird uncle or the nagging aunt if you go with the Vanguard.
That's funny.
And I think that's pretty close.
I was getting this earlier, but I think the most interesting thing is how it's really a choice between the Drifter and the Praxic Order, right?
Yeah.
You're not getting the whole picture, I think, but the Vanguard know more than is let on in the game, and the Vanguard are condoning, and just like Ikora kind of lets on in some of the first messages from Anor that you read, like she's like, back off, like don't worry about this, we got it covered. But Anor, of course, is headstrong. She doesn't trust it. She's like, I'm gonna do my job, you gonna let me do my job? And she's like, all right, do your job, whatever.
I think it was going to be a landslide victory for the Drifter, just because
I didn't anticipate that, but
because he's an NPC that we can actually see in game. I think that gave a huge advantage over.
That's true,
and I think the way they could have got around that was, rather than be like Anor, who's just written in the lore, like Shax obviously has issues with the Drifter, or should have issues with the Drifter. Someone else running.
Oh my gosh!
If it
was Shax versus, it would have been way different, right?
Yeah, and I think that would have been a really interesting, because I think a lot more people have allegiance to Shax. I think more people have allegiance to Shax than the Vanguard itself. So I think that that to me would have even taken it to like a 10, 10 out of 10 in regards to like community engagement, because you've got this, charismatic, mysterious sort of Drifter who's basically teasing you with new powers, and then you have some really dedication and allegiance to Shax or something like that, and those storylines would have been easy to join together. It would have just been, Shax could have just been helping Anor. You could still have all the lore about Anor, but he could just be overseeing it, because he's also not really in the Vanguard, so he could be helping Anor her, secret spy stuff anyway. Because
Yeah.
he doesn't,
And he does
he's
not like
the
the Drifter.
Yeah, exactly. He's not going to like the Drifter, and he wouldn't trust the Drifter anyway. So I think, hopefully they probably saw the difference of player engagement with an NPC versus, someone just written in the lore, and that I think if you have Allegiance Quest, you need to pick characters that you can see, hear, feel, in the tower or in the social spaces.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But I have to wonder as well, like, because they're, they have a smart team over there. Like, maybe I think on both sides of this, there's gonna be ramifications that we don't anticipate. Even if you think that you're in the know, I think that they're gonna want to surprise us, right?
Yeah.
So even if you think you know the whole story and you pledge Drifter, I think that they're gonna have a story told that you're like, oh man, what did I get myself into? Even though I think I'm cool with being kind of gray here,
Yeah. That'd be cool.
Even if you know the whole story and you chose Vanguard, like maybe they wanted more people to choose that way. And maybe they kind of stacked the deck and expected, like, they know human nature. People might go that way. And, maybe there's a pleasant surprise for people that were loyal or not. I guess there's so much possibility. I'm like, all right, how smart are they? How many steps ahead are they thinking about this?
Yeah, that just I think Bungie has. I mean, after sort of the Destiny 1 launch, I think now they're able to really prepare many more years ahead than they previously were, because they're not spending so much time catching up and putting out fires. And
they're not
and that
setting
kind
the
of
stage and fixing problems.
Yeah. And you see Season of the Drifter, and I think that the way that was rolled out with gameplay, lore, in-game dialogue, there is so much more integration between everything, and you can see that there's this narrative thread which is just so much more cohesive than any of the other even season passes or DLCs that we've had before. And I think that's a sign that they've had adequate time to write and rewrite and review and make sure everyone's on the same page for the story moving forward. But one of the things that I just thought in my head, and I thought, I don't know why, just you saying, like, maybe there's more plans for things coming up, which I'm sure there will be. But I just thought, imagine if it was pick between Shaxx or the Drifter. Imagine if whoever won, they like swap spots. So like, imagine if in the tower, if the Drifter won, the Drifter would be in like Shaxx's headquarters, and you'd just move
Shaxx is
to
the
basement.
Right?
How funny would that be?
Gosh.
People would be so angry if Shaxx was in the basement. And it would be a reminder that the majority of the Guardians support this new mysterious,
they kind of, I always say this on the show. I feel like there's a lot that Bungie does as that has an experimental nature to it, right? Mm-hmm. And they threw so much effort into faction rallies, which I think overall as an event was okay and it was interesting, but it didn't go as well as one would hope. But they were almost fooling around with player choice and impact, and it was kind of cool, right? Whoever won, like the tower was a little different. Well, what if you had allegiance quests and, every week whoever's on top, like they're moving around in the tower, or their appearance changes or their position in a place changes, and you see those effects every week. Yeah. Like you're saying, like Shaxx gets stuck in the basement, in the back, and Drifter's up front and center next week because everybody's into him. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I like
those. Interesting.
I think those in-game changes are probably the next step too. I think they're a little bit like the cherry on top, just to show that what you do impacts the world itself. And I think they probably
makes it feel like a
alive. It makes
living,
it really
breathing
real,
world.
right? Yeah.
Well, I keep pulling these threads and we get behind on where we should be on this show here. Let's let's move forward here, and we're going to talk about a little news for a few minutes, just what's going on this week in Destiny, and then we're going to come back.
Yeah, I was going to say you can scoot us through some news, and then we can spend more time with Myelin on lore.
I usually take too long on the news, so I'll keep it brief this week. We don't have any announcements this week, I don't think. Do we, Arrow? Anything new? We do have some fun stuff coming up that we can't wait to show off and announce to you. So keep your eyes peeled.
Just not yet.
During the month of April, I think we'll have some cool things to announce and show off to you, but not yet. Not just yet. So... Yep, let's talk about the news. Let's talk about this week at Bungie. Lord Saladin is watching you. Ooh, that's kind of creepy. You guys play any Iron Banner this week, guys?
I have not yet. I have not played
a
lot.
Not yet. I do want to do it for the Thorn quest because I'm still.
Oh yeah,
I'm still stuck at 20%.
That's exactly why I want to do it, and I actually am excited to jump in this week. But I've just been sleeping more than usual, so I have not.
Understandable.
That's on, yeah.
Yeah, I get it. Well, Iron Banner Rage is on. Of course, we've got some new mechanics at hand this week with the Iron Burden and the what is it? The Wolf's. What is the other thing called?
Favor. The
Wolf's Favor. There you go. I've heard mixed results on this. Sounds like an interesting start to something different and new. I don't, from what I've been told, the Wise and Rebuke roll isn't anything absolutely fantastic, and there's a lot of work involved. But
yeah, that's what I've heard.
I like the idea. I like where they're trying to go with this. Hopefully,
any attention on Iron Banner, right?
What's that?
I said any attention on Iron Banner.
Yeah, it needs some love. It needs some love.
Yeah.
It's definitely not what it used to be. But yeah, good luck if you're in the Iron Banner. This weekend, of course, you're listening to this on Monday. There was 3 times Valor over the weekend, so that's pretty cool. Then they promise we've got an update 2.2.1 on approach, and some previews of that. Some great things that they're offering that they're aiming, I think, to have in that upcoming patch. They are putting effort into preventing streaks where certain nightfalls appear multiple weeks in a row or don't appear at all for months. They say we'll be making sure your experience tackling strikes associated with seals isn't feast or famine. And then next, with update 2.2.1, Ada 1, over with the Black Armory expansion, we'll be offering all the weapon frames each week. So you'll still be limited in how many frames you can acquire, but you'll be able to pick, whichever ones you want, which is great. Because there was like 2 months where we didn't get machine gun to return again.
It was a while. That and the sniper.
Yeah, and the sniper. So that was a good change. We did get the machine gun back this week. So I've been trying to see what kind of good rolls I can get on those. I had some decent ones, but I got one with what was it? High impact reserves and like kill clip or something. Like,
yeah,
I feel like it'd be a good one.
Yeah, the other great thing about Ada is it's like, okay, my power weapon is my lowest light. Let's go do the machine gun.
Yes, that's the one thing I love about her is that you can at the very least like pick an item if you're trying to power up and say, okay, let me do this auto rifle because I need this energy slot power to drop. Like, how great is that?
Yeah, it's amazing.
There's nowhere else where you can really just, unless you're doing like a pinnacle weapon or something. So that's been nice. And then you'll get an armor piece to drop if you do those too. So I've powered up pretty quick. I hit 700 this week. So
nice.
There's a lot of ways you can.
Congrats. Yeah, I'm still like mid 680s or so, somewhere there.
Yeah, you'll jump up pretty quick if you start chasing all the different stuff available. They have a update and preview for 2.2.1. Some very desired updates to cosmetics are coming. They mentioned Dreaming City cosmetics. Drop rates for the Ghost Ship and Sparrow have been doubled, tripled, or more for their respective activities. Last Wish cosmetics, same treatment. 1,000 voices. This exotic will continue to be rare amongst players, but we've tuned the drop rates to give slightly better chances than what are currently available. So if you're still chasing 1,000 voices, it should help you there. Increasing drop rates for various lore books. I think this one is great. So Cade Stash, Dreaming City, and Tangled Shore. Those were a really grindy experience.
Yeah, I think that's good.
I just hope they add the Thorn lore pages to that.
Yeah, I haven't even been keeping up to date with that. Do you guys know what? I knew people were getting them dropped from completing triumphs with Thorn, but that's the last that I heard of it.
This is what I read, and this has been my experience thus far. In order to get the Thorn lore pages to drop, once you earn the weapon, you get the pages to drop. You get 1 page per 500 kills with the weapon.
Oh, wow.
So I've been intentionally equipping it, doing things since I got it, since it dropped. And just last night, I got my first page to drop.
Wow.
I mean, I think there's 10 entries. 10 entries, yeah. So that is 5,000 kills.
That's crazy. What's worse, and this is RNG?
Only in PvE, I believe the PvE kills count. So that is a lot of Thorn kills.
I better start working on that.
Good luck. Yeah, good luck. Also, they're going to have a change to the invitations of the 9. So right now, you have to complete an invitation of the 9 by the reset, the weekly reset on Tuesday, in order to have a new invitation appear on Friday. After the update, you'll have through Thursday's reset at 10 a.m. to complete the invitation. So give you a couple extra days into the next week's reset to knock that out, and be sure to get a new one when Xur actually shows up, and which I think is great.
Yeah, I hope they fine tune unlocking lore entries, just because, like something like Truth to Power as well. Like I missed 1 week because I was away, and I can't get it. And it sort of
remind me to tell you a workaround.
And same thing with Invitation to the 9. I think there needs to be a catch up mechanic, whether you use second characters or just have to do the activity twice or whatever, just to catch up in case you couldn't log on, especially for a story part of it. I think it's reasonable to have some sort of leniency there.
Yeah. They're making progress, I think, on this idea of having these things. There was I didn't catch it, but I know that there was recently they had the Scourge of the Past raid along, right?
Yep.
And I want to say Anon the 9 actually asked a question to the dev team via Twitter when prompted about this particular topic, and they were talking about just unlocking lore through gameplay. And from his tweet that I read, essentially the answer was they want there to be like a rewarding mechanic where you're able to unlock and earn lore through gameplay, and for that to feel like a reward, as opposed to just something that shows up. And I think that's a cool idea. The problem is just the implementation isn't perfect, because especially when like randomness and RNG is applied, right? Like,
oh yeah,
that's when it gets frustrating. Like if there's a direct path, and that's what I like about the Invitations of the 9. It's like you pick it up and it's like, do this, and this.
I do too.
Go get the thing. It's unlocked.
Yeah.
Great.
I think there needs to be a balance between, well, in general, I think there should always be a balance between RNG and direct path, and some things in loot and shoots are fine to be. You're just going to have to grind, because that has a really big reward. Sure. That creates a lot of story and excitement in community. We're like, hey, I did this once. I got Galahorn. Yay. Yeah. And everyone's like, no, I've done both. So there's some things that should be RNG. I don't know if lore entries should be RNG though. I think I don't know about that.
Yeah, I think a good way to do it would be as if, if there's a book or there's something where they want to say, okay, this is tied to this activity, and you get the thing by completing, okay, every 10 heroic events on the Tangled Shore, you get a piece or whatever it is.
Yeah, it almost should be
completion, but then when you open a chest, you have a chance to get another, right? So that if it's going to be RNG, have it be bonus.
Sure.
Like, okay,
Sounds
you
good.
know, I was completing it, but I opened and I got an extra one ahead of, you know, because I was doing it and I just got a good drop. And that feels good because it's, you know, this is the term we use down here, lanyap, which means like, it's like extra, it's icing on the cake.
Sure.
And everybody loves a little lanyap. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to do Black Armory stuff. I mean, I just did one for the first time the other night with the machine gun, and to get that drop upon completion now.
Yeah, because it just
real
comes
nice.
from completing the forge now, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I did the little cheese where I just
Oh yeah,
made my guy
I was gonna do that,
and,
and I didn't. Yep.
Yeah, I'm a bad person. So next up, they talk about the Nightfall Power Handicap. So the Five of Swords card was updated this season that affected the power handicap, and you have to have above 100 power handicap on that before you really get a decent modifier. But they're adding a button plus 25 and max handicap buttons to help make it a little easier to use that card. And I can say from experience, having to hit that button 100 times plus, got a little. We're like, all right, I'm resetting the card. Give me 30 seconds. I gotta mash this button 90 times. So that's welcome for sure. So those are some of the things that we're going to get. They mentioned Destiny 2 update 2.2.1 will also kick off Arc Week. So that is planned for April 9th. So it looks like we're getting a date for Arc Week. That's coming up. That's 2 resets from now. I didn't expect we'd see it that soon. They mentioned check back next week for information.
What do you guys think Arc Week's going to be? It seems so random.
It does seem very random. I mean, obviously, elemental,
right?
Elemental events, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
What lore is going to be there?
I'm guessing, you know, definitely like go out in activities and use arc weapons and classes, right? That's a no-brainer.
Yeah, maybe no lore. Maybe it's just straight up, everybody run your arc class this week.
But I have to imagine like there's going to be some rewards, and I'm hoping maybe the exotic that's hidden that we don't know what it is, right? There's an exotic that's classified. Maybe something will be tied to that.
Yeah,
like a cool
either
arc
that or it'll
exotic.
be the revelry is what they're saving that for.
Yeah, maybe so.
We had a
nobody knows how to get that cool linear fusion yet.
Oh right,
yeah. We had one of the guys that helps us with thumbnails for the podcast make up a little fake news article that said that the Arc Week was a typo and it was meant to read Shark Week. And
I saw that.
And it was going to be
that's great.
It was going to be a week of sharks in Destiny.
I could get behind that. Like, why not, man? Next up, over the Bungie security response team has an update talking about aimbots versus macros. They're in the process of banning a number of players on PC who have been using aimbots to unnaturally augment their skill. So they want to make sure that they're keeping an eye on problems like that. There's a clear line between macros and aimbots is their point. Next up, they talk about back in December, they announced they begin issuing warnings and restrictions to players with extremely poor network connections that lasted for a prolonged period of time. They're happy to report 90% of those players are no longer having that problem. For the rest, they're kind of giving like a final warning and want to stress that latency and packet loss are the biggest concerns, not throughput, meaning megabits. They're thinking more about reliability of your connection, and that's what's important. So if you've gotten a warning, be sure to look. They've got a network troubleshooting guide you can check out. You don't want to get a ban, get kicked off Destiny because your internet sucks. So call your ISP or hardwire your stuff.
Yeah. It's interesting that I would be interested of the 90% whether they just stopped playing or fixed it, because it's a really obviously interesting statistic. If 90% of the people who got a warning improved their internet connection, which means they may have been doing something wrong or intentionally doing something.
Right.
to have a poor connection for advantage. So
my guess, like when I initially read that, was that it was probably a mix of like lag switchers, and then there's probably was a big portion of people that just had intermittent problems that come and go, and probably ended up with warnings, and then, you know, problems were solved on their end, or ISP, you know. Who knows though? If it was really that many network manipulators, that's a lot.
Yeah, that's kind of scary.
Yeah, but I mean, that's a problem. It's still a problem in Destiny, you know, lag switching and, you know, DDoS problems, stuff like that, still going on. At least they're working on it. Thank you, security team. They mentioned next that they've made some more adjustments to Gambit matchmaking. That went live when the TWAB came out on Thursday. That was the 28th. So hopefully that will give you fairer matches. In the Destiny player support section, they talk about some issues with Iron Banner, including problems with a shader not showing up. Also an emblem that you're not able to purchase. So they're working on some of this stuff. And I'm going to skim through some more of this stuff. It's not super important because we got to wrap this up. There's some cool movies of the week that you can go check out as always. There's a Bungie bounty coming up, Gambit Prime. That's coming up. Where's the date? They didn't put a date on this. Interesting. Next week, they say. 10 a.m. to noon Pacific time, twitch.tv/Bungie.
Usually Wednesdays.
Yeah, it's usually Wednesdays. So look for it on Wednesday. And then some cool art to cap it off. I love how they're starting to put art at the end.
Oh yeah, it's very cool.
I love these. This first one looks like it was rendered in engine. It's just like 3D.
Yeah, that one was
awesome.
really neat. Really neat.
That's pretty cool. So that's this week at Bungie. Other notable news. What else do we have in the news? There was
notable with the tier.
What's that?
I said notable with the tier. One of them, not this first one.
Yeah, there. If you weren't keeping up on social media, there was another community summit this week where they invited some players, both content creators and non-content creators, worth noting, out to Bungie Studios for a day to talk about the game and to also talk about the season of Opulence upcoming. So that's exciting. Bungie continuing to reach out and
it's cool, man.
Ask for feedback. And
when we went to the summit, they said, we might do this again. This was really awesome. And then they've done one for every season of the annual pass.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I think it's great that they're continuing to really work hard to stay engaged with their players.
Yeah,
and
it's a big deal
with content creators.
And it's cool they get the opposite end of the spectrum, like you said. They get people that play all day long, stream it, and then other people that don't, not so much.
Yeah.
So.
And then last interesting piece of news, and we don't have to get too crazy on discussion on this, but two high-profile developers at Bungie announced their departure this week. Both from the Sandbox team, I believe, I think their titles were both senior gameplay designer. Josh
Hamrick's the lead,
yeah. Josh Hamrick and John Wisniewski, probably very familiar names to you. Have both left effective this past Friday, the 29th, from Bungie.
Yes. And of course they tweeted out, all on good terms. They've both been there a long time, and they, they said they're taking a break for just a little bit and then going to start making some games, do something else a little bit down the road. But man, of course, speculation and all that good stuff. Obviously there's a huge, huge Sandbox team. But these guys been around for a while, and I gotta say, man, when I read each one of them a few days apart on Twitter, again meeting them too, and kind of chatting with them since the summit, it was like it kind of like emotional. It kind of stinks, but it's okay. People move on.
It is tough. Things. I mean, those are two very, I believe, influential developers at Bungie, and those are two developers that have been outspoken in terms of like what they're able to engage with the community on. And so a lot of people know them well. You know, there's a ton of other developers and also really influential sandbox designers at Bungie too. But these are two kind of high profile members.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, John Wisniewski's been there for many years. Josh Hamrick's goes back to, I think, Reach or even before, and he's come and gone. You know, went to another studio, worked on something, came back like several times. Might show that he gets a little antsy, but
yeah, true. And you guys, I mean, obviously, if you've heard of these guys somewhere, it's probably been from our buddies over at Crucible Radio, because they've chatted with him several different times. So very cool.
Yeah. So, you know, unfortunate to see those guys go. I'm sure they'll be missed at Bungie. I'm sure they're going to go on and make some great things. I've heard a lot of, you know, the Earth is ending talk over these two guys leaving.
PvP is going. What's happening?
To me, it just seems like, without getting too far into this, but it just seems to me like it was probably like a natural good time if they decided that they wanted to move on to different things, because if the sandbox team and other parts of the Bungie studio, if they were wrapping up stuff on next season, and it was probably a natural time when they would be moved on to like a major project, either the next expansion or D3 proper, right? And so if they're going to leave, like, you know, they're not like, you're not going to leave in the middle of a huge project, like if that's your career. So it seems like this is probably a natural time for them to part ways.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Well, that is all the major news this week. Arrow, would you please oblige?
Yes. We'll start with our wonderful guest here, Myelin. How was your reset so far, buddy?
Yeah, I think...
Played much?
Not as much as I would like, especially because I made the 2 streams I did this week about reading rather than playing, which sort of limited. I really enjoyed.
I'm sure it's hard to play and dive in too deep. Like, you gotta just kind of hang out and read stuff like you say you do.
I do. It's amazing how much mental power it takes to live stream lore for 2 hours, and
I can imagine.
I am dead because it's just a barrage of questions and
rest time. Yeah. I was gonna say, one thing it would be cool maybe is to watch you play the 9 bounties and then kind of interpret it or you know,
so
try to understand it.
That's actually what we did. That's so we read. So with the 9 bounties, you get the Ecdysis book. I think that's how you say it. And you get one of them each week. So we had already read half of that book, and then on my Saturday morning, which would have been your Friday night, we played Invitation of the 9, and we got to that cutscene, or the in-game cutscene. We discussed that, and then we finished off reading the book. So that was actually pretty fun. So that was my reset.
Very cool.
What did you think about this week's Invitation of the 9 scene? How creepy was the Mara?
So I didn't even notice that at first. So obviously I was live streaming, but I also just record on Shadow Play, so I have the recording for a YouTube video, and so we were able to watch it back a couple times and just listen to the dialogue a bit more. And chat was like, the statue moves, and I was like, what? And then I looked at it, and I was like, oh my god, it does move. So you know, spoilers if you haven't done the Invitation of the 9 this weekend, but you return back to the plains of the 9 and once again have a conversation with the emissary, and there's a giant Marasov statue which very, very slowly moves to turn her head to face you when you're speaking to the emissary. So very subtle, but also very creepy.
Yeah, a bit foreboding too, as it seems the 9 is a bit worried about Mara. Yeah, and they don't concern themselves too much with death in life.
Yeah, I mean,
or at least they're trying to figure it out, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's even a lore entry that says the 9 don't even really understand life and death. So the fact that they're sort of arguing with the emissary about Marasov, and it seems like Marasov is in a bit of trouble. We don't really know what's happening yet, but well, I've got a couple of hunches to what's happening, and we can talk about that if you like. But I've been really enjoying the drip feed of in-game. I don't know. You wouldn't call them cutscenes. What do you call them? In-game dialogue. I don't know. Interactions with the emissary.
Dialogue interactions or something.
Yeah, I think that's
more
really
of just kind of an interactive cutscene, if you will, right?
Yeah. It's not really a cutscene, but it's a bit more than a vendor interaction. It's a bit more than when you click on the vendor and you sort of get this first person view. You've got, and I actually think it's probably definitely cheaper than a cutscene. It's probably a really effective way of doing storytelling in these like little snippets every week that I can't imagine cost a huge amount, but probably have a really big impact in storytelling.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I was surprised they even did the cutscenes that they had like for the first
For the drift,
Invitation to the Nine, because they've said as much. Like I remember when Deej was first introducing the annual pass, like he kind of pointed out like there wouldn't be a lot of cutscenes involved, but they've kind of spent the extra cash money on getting those done.
I like it.
No complaints here. Yeah. Arrow, what have you been up to this reset, man? How's your week?
Oh, dude, been sleeping off this whatever this is that I have. This is no joke. I've had this for about a week. I've fit in some time, nothing too crazy. Played some Gambit. I'm still working on my sets. I've got like 3+2 Sentry sets pieces, and then I've got 2+1. So I'm trying to finish that off, and then of course I'm 685 or so. So I'm trying to get to 690, so then I can work on the final set piece with to unlock that Pinnacle perk and stuff, to spend some more time in Gambit Prime. I really love this set idea. I do enjoy Gambit. I'll say again, like I did last week, I wish like you got one set and then you did these activities to like level that set, because it's so weird to get tier 2, tier 1 and tier 2 armor and like know that I'm like unlocking
you're just gonna trash it
of the things, but I'm just gonna trash it. It would be so much. I feel like it would be so much cooler to feel like you're investing into the set. Obviously, you'd want more drops of it because you're trying to go for certain roles on the armor. But it'd be cool, like once you found your helmet, you could just level that helmet some way doing the activities.
Yeah, anyways, I was thinking about mods would have been a good way to do it. Like you slot in a mod for that armor,
something.
What was
kind of how they did with the raid armors?
What was that event called where you could get the armor and upgrade it by doing the
Solstice?
Yeah, a bit like
right?
the Solstice armor, right?
Yeah,
and it would turn into different armor, right?
Yeah.
Yep. I feel like you would have felt like so much ownership in your set for Prime, because you're spending that time leveling up that single helmet instead of knowing you're going to trash it until you get to the third one and hope you get a good roll on it, right? But I'm enjoying it. I love that we're seeing sets, and of course this is the first iteration on it, so obviously it'll be exciting to see what we get down the road too. But I'm excited to fully get perked out on that and spend some more time in Prime. But Reckoning, been doing some Reckoning, playing the Division 2, kind of squeezing that in here and there. Nothing too crazy. I think I'm still like level 5.
You did get the Division after all.
Yeah. Yep, I did. I actually think right now, I thought it was going to be Anthem, but right now instead of Anthem, just because Division 2 has really fleshed out. They've done a really good job on it. Like there's so much content there. Yeah, and there's just it actually really works nicely for what I'm wanting right now, and it's something to just kind of go alongside Destiny. Like I played Spider-Man there for a couple months. I can just log in the Division, and I feel like I'm playing a single-player game, but if I want to match make, I can do this, do that, do this, do that, and it just works really well. Finish something, log off, finish a mission, do a couple things, log off.
Yeah, that's what I've been doing with Division. Great. Just kind of jumping in and knock out a couple little miniature activities and then call it a night, It's a good game.
Exactly. Yeah, and I've just been doing the power grind in Destiny, still doing my milestones, stuff like that. Like I said, I did hit 685. I got the I don't remember what they're called, but I got the new Titan exotic gauntlets to drop. They dropped one. They were my reward for my daily heroic, I think, or no, my daily mission on the Flashpoint planet, and they dropped one power under, dude. I'm like, no way, come on.
Man.
Or even exotic. Like, what? How did that happen? But the perk on those, again, I don't remember the name of them. The perk on those didn't seem too crazy. It was like move faster while blocking with sword and something else, and they weren't even higher power, like I said, so I just sharded them. Right. They're gone.
Wow.
Yep.
So yeah.
Anyways,
So privileged.
that was my reset. I wish you got something more, dude. Every time I shard an exotic, I like wait. It felt so nice to get like that. What were they called? What was the exotic material you'd get when you back in D1?
Oh, exotic cores.
Was it a shard? Was it called a shard? It was called a shard.
Yeah.
I was sitting here saying I'm sharding them. It felt so nice to get one of those, you know, at least something yellow,
Right.
gold or something. Now
Yeah.
you do it and it's like, here's some glimmer and 3 legendary marks. I'm like, dang, I should have just kept the thing.
Yeah.
What in the world?
Do
Anyways,
you get enhancement cores from exotics? I never.
I'm
pay
sure
attention.
maybe you can, but you definitely.
One of my
aren't
buddies calls
guaranteed.
them power potatoes, and I almost said that.
Power potatoes. That's good. Anyways, man, what about you? That's been me.
Yeah, kind of the same stuff. I actually, we finally jumped in and did some tier 3 stuff and have accomplished some of those. The tier 3 was a little bit of a grind. You really, this week, you need that exotic, you need the warlock with a well, especially with some of the modifiers this week in tier 3 to stay alive on that bridge section. And we were having a really hard time getting, there was like 2 of us trying to do it and then 3 of us, and we couldn't get a dang warlock to come in and run the right class because I think this was maybe last reset and it was arc energy, and they kept running like all these arc classes and everybody's dying. We're like, just run well, dude. Like, come on. I'm like popping bubbles trying to keep us alive.
We had some wipes too, dude, and it was like
what is it gonna take?
What is going on?
So when we finally got the right class makeup, it wasn't difficult, but it's getting the right combination of abilities and players and everything to kind of tackle the activity that makes it hard. But so I got like a full set of sentry gear now, which is pretty fun.
Nice.
And, working on some of the other sets now. It's fun having those max
I'm sure.
those max perks, but man, if you get up against a team and you do not have like your A game ready for some max tier like invaders and reapers and stuff, you're gonna get squashed in Gambit Prime. We went in, and one of my buddies who hadn't been playing anything but comp, like we went in and their team was like geared out and he was invading and he just wasn't doing anything. He's like, what is happening? I'm like, I think you're under geared, man, because this is not working out. So you definitely got to have like, you want to go in with your abilities and all your armor stacked up and everything, but it's fun. I finally completed the Ascendant Challenge time trials this week.
Oh, nice.
Got the last one I needed. I was pretty happy about that. Just kind of collecting those triumph points here and there. Trying to build that score up because I don't know why. It's a number I can increase. That's why. So That's what I've been into.
Nice.
Pretty much it so far. Myelin, I wanted to hear your thoughts on Uldren.
Oh yeah.
Uldren is like one of my favorite characters. Has been for a long time, but I was so excited that they brought him back to Forsaken. And even though he's a bad guy, or was a bad guy, what do you think about his resurrection as a guardian?
I think it was a really clever play. Like I didn't expect that at all. So I liked that aspect of it. I liked pulled pork, which is his ghost, is just has a ton of character already. So I'm looking forward to that. I think in hindsight, it just has all the to be resurrected as a guardian and not have any recollection. Like all the ducks were sort of lined up, so to speak. Like it seems obvious now that would be a cool idea. Bring back the most hated character who has no recollection of why he's the most hated character. There's just so much you could write about there. There's so much sort of potential to have a really engaging storyline. And obviously with Forsaken, Cade's death was a huge drawback to the game. And I think all they need to do is pop in whenever they want people to come back, literally pop in Aldrin and pulled pork, and you're going to get people returning just to see that story conclude, I guess, or to continue. So I think it was quite a masterful play to include Aldrin or bring him back as a guardian. Lore-wise, I can't obviously covered it, but I can't remember any real specifics apart from sort of Pulled Pork's sort of story and how he's a bit about his character. And then I'm not too sure what else. I know a lot of people are talking about whether it had to do with the Ahamkara wish or one of the wishes from the raid. Because isn't there still a raid wish that's undiscovered? Isn't there?
Wish 15.
Yeah, still is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With something like that.
Do you think that so to see that cutscene, right? We go into Mara's
throne world
at that time current seat of power, right? The unknown space. Whatever we want to call it. Not her throne world, right?
Yeah, this is something that I actually always get confused about, because she does have her own throne world, which is the where you get the exotic,
which is
where
exotic
bow, whatever, the Shattered Throne.
Shattered Throne
right?
is,
and this is called like her court. So
I
don't know. It's in the Ascend.
It's hard to know exactly what it is and what. Yeah. But yeah, so you go into that space and you go up to one of these areas where she seems to be, gathering intelligence and things, and it says, experience a vision, and you do that, and you see the cutscene. And the format in which it does it makes me wonder, to question, are you seeing something that has happened in real time, or are you seeing something that is to happen in the future, right? Because that happens, and then there's just no other indication of something that had happened, right? It's not like, okay, Aldrin wakes up, he's a guardian, and now everybody's aware of it and something's going on. No one said anything about it. Mara maybe said something that could have alluded to it, but you're not sure.
I can't remember.
It's made me wonder if you saw something that will happen.
Yeah,
right?
I remember
what
having
do you
the
think?
same questions when it was brought up. And I'm just thinking whether there has been any new lore added about a new Guardian joining. I mean, obviously there's nothing in-game. We haven't seen any big reactions. I'm just thinking those most recent ones where you see... I actually was away when Marasov left the court, her sort of final things. But I have a funny feeling she mentioned something about her brother, didn't she? I can't remember now.
I don't think she did in the last...
before she left?
The last time you meet with her, she doesn't really bring it up. She talks about, there was that allusion to the stranger. And
that's right. Yeah.
I'm trying to remember everything that she speaks about, but...
Well, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, the only
other reference point you really have is that you do see... the triangle ships or the pyramid ships in the same area that you have the vision. So you might be able to sort of extrapolate from that and say, well, we know that the pyramid ships have been activated, so they are sort of existing right here, right now. And this seems to be some sort of scanner of some sort. But the fact that you have a vision, there's lots of lore that Marasov is very, very connected with Awoken. It was one of the things that they had when they came back. She had sort of telepathic links to the Awoken. So it wouldn't be out of the ordinary to have some sort of machine that contained, so, you know, either, you know, connections with the awoken or premonitions or something like that. So I think that probably could be explained in both ways, whether it's yet to happen or it already has happened. And unfortunately, I can't remember if there's something. I remember having the same question, but I can't remember if I've read anything more recently that sort of supports that it's already happened or it's about to happen.
Yeah. I'd like to think that it happened when we saw it, but I guess they're just going to leave that story for another future, where we'll really see it told. And it's going to be a doozy, whatever happens. That's what I'm so tantalized by. Like, definitely. All right, you set that up and you're just going to leave it there? Yep. Like, come on. Another thing that I was interested to hear what you thought, and I know that you mentioned that you're not yet covering this topic, but I think the biggest reveal this season has been the content in the Thorn lore book. For every rose a thorn, I think is the name of the book, or something like that.
I have read it. I've only read that one once because I wasn't going to cover it, but we can talk about it if you've got questions about it.
I guess that, there's a big reveal there, and I don't want to spoil too much for our listeners if you haven't gone and read the book. But I guess we could leave that one maybe in the future.
I can tell you about maybe the 9 a bit more with the 2 books that were released.
Yeah, I was going to mention the 9 myself.
That's been a big 9 topic.
Yeah, because people can get those ones, and I don't really think Ecdysis really spoils anything for anything coming out in game. And in fact, I think it probably enhances your. This is sort of my sort of like test. I'm sort of like, does it spoil or does it enhance an experience in game? And I think having knowledge of
that makes sense.
Ecdysis book probably enhances the Invitation of the 9, because it sort of gives you some answers, but not necessarily spoils anything big. And I think the Dust lore book answers one of the greatest questions in Destiny that's been around since Destiny 1, which is like what exactly are the 9? So I can give you a very brief summary of those if you like.
Yeah, tell us what you think.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So the Dust lore book follows a very keen and in training cryptarch called Lavinia. And it actually starts with a reference to an original Destiny 1 Grimoire card, which is about a copper box that has dust in it. And this dust box, they realize these almost grains of sand are actual planets, very accurate representations of all the planets in our whole universe, so to speak. So she tracks it down.
It's thousands of grains of sand in the shape of planets, right?
Yeah. And so she tracks it down to being linked to the 9, and she discovers this portal, which was originally owned by Crota, originally captured by Crota, but now is no longer in the Hive's possession, or we don't think it is. And there's a whole backstory for that anyway. But she believes that the 9 are on the other side of this portal, and that they are, I guess, they're sending stuff through the portal to try understand our laws and physics and what would be able to survive. So what it looks like is these sort of blotches of biology that comes through and, perishes within 24 hours and cannot live. So you get the impression that the 9 live on the other side of this portal, but they couldn't necessarily exist in our physical space. And then to avoid capture, because Lavinia is sort of outrunning the Awoken and the Reef for other reasons I haven't talked about, but she just jumps through the portal, not knowing if she's going to go through and essentially blow up on the other side.
Ballsy move.
Right. So she just jumps through. And the way that I read it, I sort of imagine, what's that Matthew McConaughey movie when he goes into space and he goes into like the 4th dimension or something like that. Can't remember. It doesn't matter. Anyway, she goes into Interstellar. It's a bit like I that's how I picture it. It's like Interstellar. She gets into this other dimension, this other space, and just understands everything. Has this instant understanding of who the Nine are. And that's when we get our sort of biggest description of the Nine. And my interpretation of it is there were these cosmic beings that were just born at the beginning of time, and they've been overseeing our planets and the whole system and its whole development. But similar to stories where gods want to be like humans, like they want the mortality because we can hear, we can feel, we can see. It has that sort of tone to it where they like have these overseeing gods, but they can't interact with the mortal, with the chemical world, with the material world. And that's sort of the impression I get. And it's sort of revealed that the way that they have been interacting is through dark matter. And dark matter was actually the thing that blocked our senses to allow Gaul to invade the city. And the reason why the Nine used dark matter to do that was as a way for the Nine to get to us, or one of them anyway. I just read a comment just before. One of the Nine wanted to do this. So it might not be all of them, but one of them wanted...
Yeah, and there's two different sets of the Nine, right? Like, at least their beliefs.
Two factions, right?
Yeah, I haven't...
Yeah, is that right?
Well, I haven't... Maybe I need to read it again, but it seems like there was one that acted out to do this, and the reason why is they wanted to discover how to capture the light. And that's why they're interested in us, because light is acausal and doesn't obey our world, essentially, same as darkness doesn't. And that's why they're interested in the Drifter, because he has taken and he has, shown some skills in that. And so they think that maybe if you have this acausal power, it would help them materialize or better define themselves in our space. And that's sort of been my interpretation of the Nine from the Dust Book.
Yeah, one of the things that from the different, I don't remember which book it's in, but that kind of stuck out to me was what is explained is that the Nine, their existence and consciousness intrinsically depends on biological life in our solar system, right?
Yes, that's something I didn't mention. Yeah, it talks about protecting their hearts, which ended up being the planets themselves. So yeah, I think there's some truth to the material life also fuels them in some way, and there's this delicate balance, and that's their power and also weakness.
And so it seems like they want to figure, or some of them at least, or one of them want to determine if there's a way for them to exist without depending on that.
Yeah.
In my, I guess, kind of reach or assumption is especially because they know or anticipate what's coming, and we could be looking at, like the Drifter said, there's another extinction level event coming. Mm-hmm. If that's true, and you see the extinction of much life or all life as known in the solar system, then the Nine may cease to exist in the form that they currently do.
Yes.
And so it seems like, from what I understand, there's almost like two camps in the Nine that, one that want to totally escape that definition of themselves altogether by trying to figure out a way to either hijack like the light or the dark, right? To kind of manipulate their existence. And then there's one that seems like they're on the side of humanity to an extent, and just trying to figure out how can we like corporealize to influence what's going on and what's coming.
Yeah, that's cool. I think that's definitely a better explanation than what I've got to. I think at the moment
it's a lot to like. I keep reading it.
Yeah, it takes a while. Paying
attention to a lot of discussions. Yeah. I'm trying to like wrap my head around like it's a very heady story and explanation of like what the Nine are supposed to be, and it's not cut and dry. Like it's not what anybody expected. Like, yeah, the 9 are just these 9 dudes and, you know, Jupiter or whatever, right? Like, it's not that cut and dry.
and I think
there's some kind of like,
that's good. I think that's a good thing, and that's sort of what I said in my sort of lore video about them. Is like it really does feel like Destiny 1 again, where it's not so cut and dry. It's like, this is what happened. It's like, hey, like I'm going to read to you what I think is the best description of the 9 as we have it. And then I'll give you my interpretation. And then, you know, you make a decision to think if you would interpret that paragraph differently. But here's you know, here's where I'd put your attention. This is what I would read if you want to try to understand who the 9 are. And they're pretty much the points that you brought up as well.
Yeah, and all of that is like just totally my interpretation of it, and there may be a lot more to read and
I think
understand to really.
You added a good point about the different factions. Is one of the things that I didn't make very clear in my last video was that it was one that got punished for doing that, and so I guess I definitely made it seem like that's what all the 9 want, because I was sort of thinking about the Chosen and how like the Drifter was one of the Chosen and how they're really interested in Guardians. So I was sort of taking a step back and thinking, why are the 9 interested in us? And this could be an explanation for that. But when you actually read it in more detail, it's definitely that one of them got punished for that, but maybe he only got punished because they also said that if Goal succeeded and used his weaponing on the sun, they would have ceased to exist too. So it was more that maybe they are.
They mentioned he risked. He risked everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Because exactly. Yeah, it's fascinating, and it kind of opens up, like you said, a door to Destiny that kind of goes back into like the deep mystery that makes Destiny so interesting. Like, and there's a lot more to discover and what the 9 are and their intentions, and it's really interesting. It's very heady.
Yeah, and so to add to like what happened this week in the invitation, obviously Marasov's in trouble, and the thing that I think about is Lavinia jumping through the portal, being in this area with the 9, and it ends on a bit of a cliffhanger and a bit of a twist, which I think I've got some more information on, but essentially something that's not the 9, or we don't think it's the 9, takes Lavinia and puts her in danger. And my sort of assumption is wherever Marasov is, that same something might be threatening her as well. And we have a pretty good idea of what that is. It's actually in the Truth and Power book about who that witch is. And that's out now, actually. So I was told by one of the viewers.
Yeah, it uses a lot of the same language and descriptors. Like a syringe, and I'm forgetting some of the key words, but you know, it discusses like there's this common thread between those 2 books and Savathun because of the interest in like black holes. And that whole like weaving reality through a syringe, and it's really
and
weird.
And apparently in the most recent Truth and Power book, Darlene Carew, which is Savathun's daughter, has a bone tea set, which is obviously very specific.
Yes,
and the witch with the bone tea set is the person who takes Lavinia when she's in the 9's realm.
Yeah, that's who she meets.
So right. I would, if my money would be on Marasov's in trouble because she's battling those guys.
Interesting. I love how, even if it's very just on the fringe, how much things are connected that we're seeing, like how they're trying to get like, and they have been for a while, especially Mara and the 9, but even what's going on in the Dreaming City and the Ahamkara, and how there's something about the Ahamkara and their extinction that affected the 9. And just this story and what we're talking about, like it's all kind of coming together in this big web of what's going on around us that we can't really see. And it tells an interesting story, and it's setting a lot of stuff up. And I can't wait to see where they go with it.
Yep. Agreed.
And then on top of that, we've got, a lot of the other things going on with the Drifter and the Shadows and Shin and the Last Word and Thorn. That's all been really fascinating stuff. If you're listening, you haven't kept up with a lot of that stuff, that's a really fun place to go read and
Definitely
see what's going on behind the scenes there.
It's cool too because like this season, there's even like little, just not a ton, but little snippets of possibly things hinting for next season.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, which is really cool. Yep.
Yeah, I think Era, you had even put in the notes like season of opulence. What are some things that we could speculate on here?
Yeah, because people noticed real early on in the videos or the release we were getting on the annual pass and the content and stuff that it appeared as though we were going to make a return to oh my goodness,
Leviathan.
Totally drawing a blank right now.
Leviathan.
Thank you. Yeah. And then there's even like at least a lore entry. I know one that has some info about possibly building that up a little bit, but nothing extremely concrete, obviously, but still. Interesting. Like there's so, like you said, Cyborg, there's so much going on, and even myself, like I found myself diving in even more the last, in these last couple seasons. And if you don't do any of that, of course, the game's still fun and stuff, but man, does it enrich the experience. Yeah. It's crazy, and that's the great thing about Myelin and some other content creators out there on YouTube. It's like if you don't go dive in, kind of like you mentioned before, Cyborg, you can't, or you don't. It's Myelin, just kind of very nicely does some crazy amounts of work and compiles it in a 10 to 15 minute long video. Except I think today's was even 20 minutes long.
Today's a big one.
You can kind of go just basically on demand Netflix style lore for Destiny. It's great.
Yeah, it's nice. I'm really interested.
We appreciate the hard work.
I'm hoping they kind of explore, who Callus really, like what he's really up to and his nature. After what we know of, what he found out there somewhere in the universe,
to the
right
now as well, and I think there's a really big storyline in there. I don't know if all of it will come out though in the season of Opulence. I think it might just hint at it again, but they really have set Callus to be part of the end game as well. Like he really has been a big figure that hasn't been resolved. He's sort of like the next Oryx, and we only really got a hint of him in Destiny 2. So I'd be interested to see if they're looking to resolve sort of Callus's thread, or if he's going to sort of persist beyond Season of Opulence.
I'm really hoping they set him up as more of a neutral party player, similar to the Nine.
Like it,
a force in our solar system and in the universe that maybe is more selfishly motivated.
I could see him like a spider vendor, but of space. Like a.
Oh yeah, man, that'd be cool. Yeah, right. It's like if we're returning to Leviathan, obviously we haven't gotten, like a patrol space is kind of stretching it, but man, that thing is massive, right? We've hardly been anywhere on that thing. And then I had this random thought this week, and not knowing some of the lore entries and stuff like that, I could be way off. But if we did actually go back and like the specific entry I'm talking about, like giving the Guardians a reason to go back, like I just wonder what the new title would be. And for some reason I thought about the Shadows.
Yeah.
I don't know
if that would be Shadow, man.
Right? Yeah. So that would just be cool. I don't know. It's neat. Again, guys, like I've always been one to kind of like dive into the lore here and there, and I very much respect it. But these past couple seasons, I've really just been kind of reading it, starting with the Black Armory, and it's really cool to see this stuff unravel or kind of see what's going on.
One of my favorite quotes from Callus is he says that the Earth has no shadow yet, and it's a reference to the shadows of Callus, rather not the shadows of Yor, but his so it's called Shadows of Callus.
His assassins.
His way of like picking elite warriors is to sort of mass genocide a group, and whoever's left standing becomes, one of his shadows, one of his sort of elite fighters. And he's interested in. He's
such a good title.
He's obviously interested in Guardians joining him, so that'd be cool.
My theory on Callus is, of course, it seems obvious, he had an interaction with the darkness of some form, and he's got some kind of paracausal power. Just don't know exactly how it functions, but just teased by the raid and how it seemed that his ability and interest is focused on consumption, right? Like he says, grow fat from strength. Yeah. It's all about consuming strength, as opposed to the Hive, who are interested in like shaping reality by the sword logic and like cleaving, reality till you are death, right? Like that's their thing. And Callus, it seems like his logic is, just consume everything till you're all that's left, and consume it and become strong through that. And so he's interested. He's gone to all these races and like committed genocide, like wiped out entire races. And he's like enticing you to become his champion, as if he wants to fatten you up so that he can consume your strength, And I think that's what's happened to his shadows. Like, I think he consumed them, like he ate them. That's my wild, like, tinfoil hat theory of like how Callus functions, like what he's up to. And that's his pact, right? With whatever power he's gotten his strength through. Like he has to, because this is my other overarching Destiny theory, but my understanding of the darkness is that basically it's just entropy, but it's a lie, and it furthers itself by saying like you have to be strong and you have to destroy to be the strongest, but in reality it's just entropy is its function. And so its lie to its agents is like, be the strongest and destroy everything, and that's how it accomplishes entropy.
Nice.
There you have it. And then from like a real gameplay perspective too, like all the stuff we're talking about with this possibilities and lore and stuff with Season of Opulence, like we know we're getting a new raid and a new 6-player match-made activity. Or is it just not match-made, just a new 6-player activity? I'm not sure.
I think they did say it's match-made.
Match-made. I can't remember if it said that on the page or not, but it'll just be interesting to see, like, with what they're building up. Obviously it's going to tie into those activities. So
yeah, I can't wait.
Yeah.
Yep.
I've enjoyed the heck out of this year so far.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And when you think about it, it's obviously not, because you can't buy one a piece, but if you're really enjoying the lore and the other aspects, it's like 12 something a season for the obviously the paid content. Yep. So
yeah,
it's been
$10
pretty fascinating.
Isn't bad for what we're getting every 3 months.
Yeah. Yep. So,
well, Myelin, do you have any other topics or tinfoil hats you'd like to put on before we wrap up the show?
No, I think
not required.
Yeah, no, I think probably just stay tuned to the invitation of the 9. I think I'll put most of your focus on that. I think we didn't talk about the Ecdysis book, but read them as they come up. They, in my opinion, it's pretty much the origin story of the emissary. So, it sort of explained why she had a ghost last week and all that kind of thing. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And it sort of fits what we were saying before, that the 9 can't get to us, so they needed someone to be their emissary. They needed someone to be in our physical space to communicate with us. So yeah, that's a cool one too.
Last question I'm going to ask you, I promise. Why do you think the Drifter's so hungry?
Oh, with not cannibalizing, with eating the Fallen and eating Cabal.
He's always talking about eating and hunger.
Do you know that he's...
I didn't know if you meant hungry for darkness or hungry for all the things that he eats.
You know that he's eaten Fallen and Cabal and stuff before? Yeah. And there's a really cool lore piece in the Allegiance quest which talks about the Dark Age and how he would die from starvation and his ghost would bring him back and he would still be hungry. And I thought that was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
That was such a cool bit of imagery.
I did too.
And it really sort of sums up the Drifter. And he's a survivor, you know. He's survived one sort of post collapse. So to summarize the Drifter, he's like a doomsday prepper. He's the ultimate doomsday prepper. And that's what he's doing right now.
I like it. All right, man. I'll stop picking your brain.
Good chats.
All right, well, this is usually the part of the show where we would do Derp Fam Discourse, but we run long this week.
We knew he'd go long this week.
Yeah. So we're going to save that for next week. We've got some great emails and stuff from you guys that we'd love to read. We're going to get to those. Don't you worry. There's always next show. But if you'd love to send us some discourse, especially about things we've talked about today, what do you think about some of the stories going on? Or do you have a follow-up question for Myelin? Maybe we can forward it to him and get an answer on something.
Yeah.
Send us an email, destinyresetpodcast@gmail.com or speakpipe.com/destinyreset.
There you have it.
There you have it. Next up, we would usually give a shout out to our patrons. Do we have any new patrons this week? I know I saw one or two come through.
Yes, we have some pending patrons.
Okay.
We gave some shout outs previously, but we do have some pending ones out there still. So
we need your gamer tag.
Your messages.
Yes, check your patron messages so that we can obtain your gamer tag and give you the proper shout out you deserve on the show. But in the meantime, thank you for your support. If you don't know what a patron is, go to patreon.com/destinyreset. And for as little as $1 a month, you can support the production budget of our show. If you do so, you get a few perks, get a shout out on the show. You get your gamer tag posted on our website forever. Or until something happens to the website.
It goes down.
And then you get an invitation to a Discord channel just for Derp Fan patrons and supporters where you get to ask, what's your favorite crisps and does pineapple really belong on pizza and what are you drinking today?
All those important questions.
All the fun things. Yep. All right, man. Myelin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we're pumped to have you on. Our community is going to be extremely excited. So.
Awesome.
Oh yeah, I told some of my buddies we're having Myelin on this week. They're like, oh man, it's going to be awesome. They're excited, so
nice.
They're looking forward to it.
They enjoy.
Yeah. Can you tell us where people can find you? All the places they can find you if they want to come check out your content or converse with you.
Sure. YouTube. Myelin Games, Myelin. Same on Twitter, Myelin Games. So they're the two best places to find me. And then we've got the Destiny Down Under podcast, which is at DDU_podcast. And that's about it, really. I think between those, you'll catch me on Twitter or on YouTube.
Get your fair share of Myelin. Yeah, and we'll of course put his Twitter handle in our tweet out for the episode a couple times this reset, so you can click through there.
Will you be attending Guardian Con this year, Myelin?
I have planned to. Yeah, I have planned to come to Guardian Con. For sure. Yeah, it's in the diary.
Excellent.
So I don't think I've done anything official yet for it, but the plan is to be there. Yeah.
Sure. All right, man. I'm going to be sure to look for you this year and try to meet you then.
Awesome. Awesome.
All right. Okay. Arrow, where can people find you on the internets?
You can find me on Twitter and YouTube at AER0KNIGHT. What about you, man?
You can find me on Twitter at CyborgSasquatch. And then you can find us on the web at www.destinyresetpodcast.com or on Twitter at DestinyReset. And be sure to subscribe to us on your favorite podcast app of choice. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, thank you for your reviews. think we've got a new one. You had a couple you wanted to.
Yeah, we got a couple new ones. Furball59 said they've been playing since the beta. Recently found our show. That's awesome. Thank you so much for tuning in. And then Jimmy Scooter found the show about a year ago. Been playing Destiny. Actually, it's always interesting to see when people started playing. Said they'd been playing it since a few months after the Taken King. So very cool.
Nice. Taken Tot. Good old Taken Tot. Thank you for those reviews. Gentlemen, if you are listening on Apple Podcasts and you haven't left us a review yet, please do. It helps us get seen and heard by more listeners just like you.
Exactly.
All right. I think we can call it a show.
I think so. I think I've officially gotten more nasally as the hours have went on. I think it's getting worse. Listeners can tell me if so. But Myelin, thanks again, dude. We definitely love to have you back on again sometime down the road. There's always plenty to talk about in the lore world of Destiny.
Awesome.
So
thank you for having me.
Join us again sometime. Yeah, of course. Always welcome. And as usual, guys, until next reset, have fun playing Destiny 2 and take care, Guardians.